Okay, Wayne, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Rachel, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay, I made you both co-hosts. You guys are in charge of the controls.
Oh,
Wayne looks thrilled.
Wayne rushed home from a high school game just to be here.
Oh, very nice.
I think you did a really good job. But the body.
Okay, you got background noise, Rachel. Okay, I'm gonna let people in. We'll we'll give it just a couple more minutes here to let more people join. Okay, I think we will go ahead and get started here. Welcome everyone to the October Zoom meeting. I know that Taylor's working on some more guests for our monthly meetings. But this month we thought we would just leave it a little bit more for open forum based on how games are going so far this fall season. So I threw up a few topics that I know have come across my desk in regards to issues, but definitely want to not enough material here, so to fill 60 minutes, or we could go 60 minutes into complete depth of each of these items, but really want to hear from anybody out there that wants to talk through questions or issues that they've had on their games. So mod rules, I think, continue to be somewhat difficult in the aspect of we have Washington Youth Soccer now, which is the no heading, offside called at midfield line, and goalkeepers cannot punt or drop kick the ball. And that is through U12 and below. And I think a lot of the clients that Northwest Soccer officials assigned for pretty much are following this rules for all the way through U12. I know that there are some leagues out there that are associated with Washington Youth Soccer who aren't actually following it. So the next one here is then WPL, which, as you can see, isn't quite as straightforward as what Washington Youth Soccer has tried to do. So at U9, U10, they have no intentional heading, goalkeeper can't punt or drop kick, offsides called at the build-out line. For U11, again, no intentional heading, there's no build-out line, and the goalkeeper can punt and drop kick, and slide tackling is now allowed. And U12, there is heading allowed, no build-out line, goalkeeper can punt and drop kick the ball, and slide tackling is allowed. So that's the WPL mod rules. Lastly, I had this question come up this weekend in regards to if a defender intentionally heads the ball in a U11 game in the penalty area, or even maybe in the goal area, in trying to prevent a goal being scored, what do you do? So in researching a little bit about this rule, USU Soccer actually has this provision in their rules that anytime you have intentional heading that occurs within the penalty area, you actually take the ball outside of the penalty area, and it's an indirect free kick for the attacking team outside the penalty area when the defensive team has had the intentional heading. So with that, any questions about mod rules? Okay, Vasilius.
Stupid question, but why they don't make all the rules the same?
Because
I said stupid question.
each league has to be unique.
Richard, regarding that last slide, so 10 years or younger, for heading inside the penalty area, we must move it outside. So that means U11, U10, U9, U8 matches for all leagues?
So again, this is USU Soccer. So I'm going to go, even though this says all players age 10 and younger, I'm going to go with any league that is not allowing intentional heading would then fall into this rule. Because USU Soccer's rules around intentional heading is for 10 and younger. So if I was on an RCL U12 game, since they have no intentional heading at U12 for RCL, if I had a defending player intentionally head the ball in the penalty area, I would move that ball outside of the penalty area and have the attacking team take the kick from there.
And even
Does
though
that help?
yeah, it does. But even though most of those players are most likely 11 years old, with some playing up at 10 years old for U12 RCL.
Anybody who has the intentional heading rule would follow this outline of taking it outside the penalty area.
Okay.
Richard, I've got a question.
Yep.
Okay, I just grabbed my roster from a U13 match that I did that apparently had kids that were born in December of 2012. I'm just calculating back that means that they were 10 years old last week, and I was not paying attention to that at all.
That's the coach's responsibility since you're doing a U13 game.
Okay.
That's why RCL initially and then the rest of U Soccer followed in increasing the intentional heading to U12 because of the amount of players that play up. And so they were hoping that by this, they would get everybody who's 10 and younger following this rule, even though they may be playing on a U12 team. Okay, any other questions about mod rules? Okay, we're going to keep moving because rosters is another fun topic. So I always go back to, we can all get caught up in rosters, and coaches can try to get us caught up in rosters. Even team managers will try to get us caught up in rosters. So I always look at, why do I even need a roster as a referee? I see the roster as being something that I can walk away from the field after the game, that I know which players actually played that game because I've checked them in, and any players that I need to do a misconduct report on, I can write a misconduct report because I have jersey numbers and I have names. So in my opinion, that's what the purpose of the roster is for the referee. Now, I know there's lots of other purposes that everybody else has for the rosters, making sure that players are registered, making sure that the player who's playing should be on that team. Most of the rosters now get generated off of their registration systems. I know RCL, if somebody gets a red card, then the next game, the software doesn't even allow them to put that player on the roster. So we can't even check them in as a referee, or would we let them play? So rosters have lots of different reasons for existing, but I always get back to, for a referee's perspective, we just need to walk away with something. I encourage you to keep your rosters probably through at least the end of the league season. So, you know, after November, when the fall league is done, then, you know, throw those in the recycle bin. But I keep them just in case anybody has any questions, or any teams file a protest, or leagues have questions. And then how many copies do we need of the rosters?
I always
So
ask for 3. One for
You always
me.
ask for 3?
Well, one for me, one for both coaches. That's, I don't know if I'm right, but I always ask for at least 3.
Okay. Do you get 3 from each team, or just 3 total?
3 total. Any combination, permutation.
Okay. If between the 2 teams, they only have 1 roster, are you okay with that?
then I would take a picture of it for my purposes.
And then who are you going to give and you give the roster back to the team that gave it to you?
No, I'll switch. Like I'll give team A team B's copy and vice versa. Except for ECNL and ECRL, I think only the home team provides rosters, and you give it only to the home team based on their rules.
Yeah. So I think the big piece here is that in order for us to play a game, you know, we need to a roster. KD, I really like that approach of, you know, when you only get one roster, you take a picture of it so you can walk away with your copy after you've checked the players in, and then you can give that copy back to whoever you want to give it back to at the end of the game that has completed out the misconducts and goals, etc. The next question is, you know, player cards. Do we need, you know, laminated player cards? Can we do digital cards? Why do they give us rosters that have pictures of all the players at the bottom of the roster? So what are we all doing out there in regards to player cards? So I think that the piece here is, again, we're wanting to make sure we get a game played, and we've got two teams, and we've got a roster, at least one copy for me, and that roster probably has teams on the top half and the bottom half. You know, I haven't done a WPL game this year, so I don't know what the WPL rosters look like. Are they still handing us a roster that only has one team per page on it? Anybody?
Some are. You can print them out two different ways, with both teams or one team with the pictures.
Okay. Right. So, and if we've got pictures that are printed off with the rosters, do we feel like we got to go find player cards? I know I don't ask for them. If I got a picture at the bottom and I got a player name and it matches with the jersey number, I'm good.
I know what WPL says that the pictures on the roster can be in lieu of the cards officially.
As well as digitally. WPL emphasized that this year, that digital copies on phones, tablets are also acceptable.
Yep. What about writing in names? Can teams write names in on the roster the day of that didn't print out?
Depends.
I like that, Nick. It depends.
Because I think I speak for most of my referee colleagues when I say that, of course, we're following all the documented guidelines when it comes to rosters and player cards. So my question about this really is there any guideline about who's particular about not having written names on the rosters?
So, you know, as we just went through this information, I feel like the leagues have set it up so that people really shouldn't have to write in names on rosters, because they can go and print their roster, you know, an hour before the game. That should have everybody on the roster. I know that all of us have heard probably every excuse in the book from the manager and or the coach about how when they printed it, they thought it had the player's name on it, but it didn't actually have it. Or, you know, I printed this and for whatever reason, I couldn't get little Johnny's name to print, even though I know he's on his league, which I think gets to what Richard said earlier about they can show us a digital roster in case they really truly were having problems with the software. So I think our goal as referees is that we, again, have two teams that have showed up ready to play. They're going to pay the referees. They've probably paid to use the field. So I'm gonna play the game. If a team wants to write a name on their roster and insist that they should be on that roster, then I'm just gonna let the other coach know that, hey, they've written this name on here, and if you don't think that's what should be done, then you should file a complaint with the league. And that can get sorted out afterwards.
Yeah, Richard Cameron raised his hand.
Yeah, Cameron.
So I have two things for this. First, I would say that if you are going to allow a name to be written on a roster, document it. Right? That this is a fantastic time to write a supplemental report. And then when you file your match report, file the supplemental as well, and then let the assigner know. If you know for a fact that the club or the client has more avenues or communication, you can go through a route that one of our referees went through this past weekend, where they had a roster that had a player crossed off for suspension, but the roster was printed for the Saturday before the Saturday game and didn't account for the fact that the player had already served the suspension. So they called us. We called the club scheduler, who's listed on all of their teams. She pulled up the GOT Sport and was able to say, yes, the current roster as of this time shows that this player should be allowed to play because the paper roster that the teams had was not accurate and did not have the suspension filled. So either A, document everything that you do, or B, call your assigner and see if they can't help to, solve the situation.
Thanks, Cameron. Cody?
For those of you working WPL games, it is written in their rules that if any last-minute handwritten changes and additions is made to the matchday roster, a copy must be provided to both the referee and the opposing team. And it is only limited to the addition of players and jersey numbers.
Okay, so based on that great feedback, anybody have any other questions, scenarios that's come up that you want to ask about?
Hey, Richard, this is Matt.
Yep.
Hey, so you asked for a scenario. This happened last season, and I'll throw it out there and ask how this should have been handled. But I was AR1, had a great center ref. It was, I don't even know what level it was or whatever. I mean, it was like U17 boys. Checked them all in. Everything looked good. Rosters were good. Player cards, everything looked good. And the center ref issued a caution in the first half. And I was actually impressed by this center ref who was documenting at halftime, trying to be contemporaneous with the issue that happened, issuing the yellow card. And he looks at me, he's like, Matt, this guy's not on the roster. Matt, this guy's not what happened. This kid walked up in his plain clothes onto the bench, got dressed, and started playing, got a yellow card, and I approached him during halftime and said, hey, where is your name on this roster? Now what? So we obviously suspended him for the rest of the game. He couldn't play the second half, but I mean, do you kick the coach out because he probably knew? Do I kick myself out because I wasn't monitoring the bench as AR1? But it was the first time in how many years I've ever seen a kid just walk up. No. Oh, and I'm sorry to add to this. Yeah, he admitted that he got a red card the prior weekend, and he was suspended. So what do you do with?
So Matt, what I would do, I get back to the piece on us. We have teams, we've got refs in a field, and let's play the game. But I think this goes to Cameron's point of completing that supplemental report after the game to report that player had entered the game, was cautioned. You should be able to, on that game, probably get that player's name from the coach, because if the player doesn't want to give it to you, we really don't have to start the second half unless they want to give it to you, and then let the league sort it out afterwards on what they want to do with the game. Does that help, Matt?
Yeah, no, perfect. I mean, we certainly brought to the attention of the visiting team, the opposing team, what was going on. And kind of like what you were saying, it's just like two teams are there, they want to play. And obviously we continued the game. We did not let that player continue the second half, but the visiting team was, all right, let's just continue to play. So yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I
Anybody
guess
else have
that's
any
that scenario.
questions? Yeah, Nick.
Is it totally outside the grounds of acceptable practice and custom to give that player a second caution for entering the field without permission? Because I really see that as intentional cheating with having thought about it ahead of time. And they're trying to
I
circumvent
guess,
like justice from having gotten probably a rightfully deserved red card before.
yeah, I guess you could go down that path. I'm sure that, because I'm going to guess what's going to happen is that if that team even wins, they're going to lose the game anyways. Because if I was the losing team that didn't have that player, I would be filing a protest for them winning with an illegal player. So personally, you probably could do that. I wouldn't do it because that seems like a lot of paperwork that I then have to spend my time on. Cody,
guess-
you got a thought?
I do. Just file the supplemental report. I've had a few instances, particularly on adult games, but I assume that it would apply to youth games as well, where a player snuck onto the bench after he had been suspended for a game. The league came back and increased his suspension. So, if they want to, as I like to say, if they want to play dumb games, they're going to win dumb prizes. So, let the powers be deal with that kind of situation.
Is there any penalty to the coach for knowingly allowing that suspended player out on the field?
That's what I think the league would deal with.
The league would. Okay.
Yeah. I know when we found illegal players during tournaments, because you don't really get the luxury of leagues sorting it out afterwards, those teams pretty much get disqualified at that point in the tournament and can't go to playoffs. Which we've had a lot of coaches explain to us on how unfair that is, which we can't understand for them since they're the ones that put illegal players on the field. But okay, I'm going to keep us moving along, or we're going to run out of time. So referee abuse, I just kind of want to talk through some of the logistics of this because I think we're having issues on it getting reported so it can be handled quickly. And I just kind of want to remind all of us, we have different tools on how to handle the situation. I think I know there's a lot of adults on this webinar tonight, but we need to help empower and mentor our younger refs so that they feel capable of doing using these same tools to deal with referee abuse on their games. And when we model this behavior on the older games where we are the centers, it's going to empower our younger referees who are ARing those games with us to follow these same steps in their games and hopefully be able to take care of the referee abuse that does occur. So again, as officials, we're dealing with spectators, coaches, and players. We have the tools of being able to warn, caution, send off. We can use that 3-step process with our coaches and players. But when it comes to spectators, we've got to go through the coach and warn the coach, caution the coach, and then send the coach off if the spectators can't correct their behavior. Make sure that if you do have referee abuse in your game, that you are calling or texting your assigner afterwards to let them know what occurred. If at the time you don't feel comfortable continuing the game because of the abuse, then you should abandon the game. The important part is not only just reaching out to let your assigner know, but also to then complete the supplemental report. And the supplemental report, I think people sometimes have a hard time finding. And so I thought I would just kind of go through this for people. But as a referee, if I'm logged into RidgeStar under my referee tab, we have this misconducts where we go in and fill out our cautions and send-offs. And if we have a supplemental we need to complete, you'll see underneath the misconduct tab, we have a supplemental. And with that supplemental, we then can, just like in our misconducts, click on the prompt and then enter our match number in, which then will give us a screen to complete our report. But in this last report that I did, the nice thing about supplementals is it automatically fills in a lot of information for me, mainly the home team, the away team, what time the game, what day the game was, what time, what field, etc. I'm then able to enter in what occurred. And once I'm done with that, I can hit, I think it's update, but I'm not sure, or create when you do the original one. But the really nice thing about it is that when you're done, that's not gonna, when you're done, the assigners can easily do a PDF of your report, and then they're able to share that appropriately as necessary. When we have referee abuse, we also need to report that referee abuse according to the processes on the Washington State Referee Committee website. And so if you go to the main page there, and if you scroll down, you will find managing referee abuse and assault. And if we go to this page, it will tell us the steps we need to follow in regards to reporting it, and who it needs to be sent to. But again, the important part is you completing that report that then can be emailed to these individuals that they're asking us to email these to in a very nice, easy way. When you have referee abuse, all three members, if it is a 3-person crew, should complete a supplemental report, so that way all 3 reports can be submitted to the appropriate authority. Let's see here.
Richard, when we click the button to submit the supplemental report, does that automatically send either an email, some kind of workflow message to our assigner, or do we have to proactively follow up with you, Ryan, Craig, whoever the assigner is for that match?
Yeah, proactively reach out to your assigner so that you can have a conversation that you've completed the report and discuss next steps. We do not get an email that tells us a supplemental report has been filed.
Okay, I see. Thanks.
And
Richard-
we can go
Richard-
weeks without a supplemental report being filled out on the web page.
Richard Cameron raised his hand again.
Yep, great, Cameron.
So just because I have recently filed a referee abuse report, for anyone that is filing a referee abuse report for a U.S. club sanctioned game, the emails that are listed on the SRC site has a misspelling in the email addresses. So the U.S. club email addresses they have 3 S's in the U.S. soccer part instead of 2. So just make sure that you edit those email addresses before you send it. Otherwise, the email will get kicked back to you.
Did you send that to Jim so he can get that fixed?
Oh, that's probably who I should send it to. While I'm sitting here, let me just send him a text real quick. But
Okay.
yeah, I'll send him a text. But just in case that happens before he gets around to fixing it, just remove an S.
Okay. Okay, so I think those were just the pieces I wanted to hit real quickly about referee abuse. Anybody have any questions, comments, scenarios that they want to talk about regards to referee abuse?
I just want to say thank you to Cameron for filing the report because I was in the situation and I really like that the crew is on top of getting those reports in.
Thanks, Evan. Yeah, and that's key, Katie. That's the big piece why we want to make sure the referees are reaching out to the assigner so that the assigners can help facilitate that process as quickly as possible. Okay. What other topics did anyone want to bring up tonight for the meeting? Any rumors that people want verified or dispelled?
Oh, I've got lots of questions if you're opening up the floor.
Yep.
Okay, well, one, are we gonna do, or is there an upcoming training on reckless tackles and serious foul play and differentiating those and clips from youth matches?
Do you want one?
Yes.
Okay. Give me and Cody a few weeks. We'll put something together and then look at the schedule and see when we can present something like that.
So Mick, you wanted reckless and what? What was
Serious
the
foul
topic?
play.
Reckless and serious foul play?
Just the difference between the two, or are you looking for the difference between reckless and excessive force type challenges?
I've read what I think I'm supposed to read. That does not help me if I can't see the video clips.
Okay, gotcha. I'll see what I can put together.
Yeah, Vasilius.
I would like to mention something that happens this past weekend. I was in a ECNL game in Preston, and actually it's not something a big deal, but I think we have to address it especially for the new referees. Ryan was on the game too, but it wasn't like AR on the other side. On the coach's side, it was a kid, I don't remember his name, and the coach was like right on the line of the field. So the kid, instead to tell him, because it was like the coach was adult and probably in our age, so the kid, instead to put him on his place and tell him just step back 2 feet or something, he just went inside the field, he went around him. Back and forth, because I was there. I had a game after that. I went close and nicely, I told him, sir, can you please back up a couple feet, and give some space to the AR. Don't be in his way. And he said, don't worry about it. I'm gonna. So the way that he was react after I asked him, with my uniform, to step back. It could be like that he doesn't care, and in this situation that kid could be bothered with he's standing over there, and if you say something to him, that's gonna escalate especially if teams lose by 6 goals different or something. I don't know if we have to. I mean, you guys have to say something, but the young kids, they're referees. They supposed to tell them in the nice way that just step back. Don't have to say a lot. On the previous topic that you have, I think that this is what I want to say.
Yeah, and I think Vasilius, that dovetails well with the comment I made earlier about how as adult referees we've got to help kind of set the tone and model the right behavior. And there I would hope that the center ref would have noticed that their AR was constantly having to go around the coach. And or maybe even just that the center ref would notice that the coach is standing on the touchline constantly instead of being back in their technical area. And then that way that center ref can say, hey, coach, I need you, in your technical area, which is a foot off the touchline. And, I know at least with East Side fields, they've got enough distance there that they can be that foot off. I know sometimes at Starfire between 3 and 4, we struggle with distances there. So it's a little bit more understandable, but yet they do still have those nice white lines for them. So I do appreciate you bringing that up, because I think we need to help model that behavior and help our younger referees build that confidence so that they do feel empowered to say, hey, coach, you got to step back and get back in your technical area so I can run the line for you.
And I'm sorry, one more thing that I just remember. And I see that from Ryan. I'm doing that all the time, but I encourage every referee to do that, especially the young referees, to do as before they start the game. And if it's tight space, have them go to the parent side and have them be outside of the turf, or at least 2 feet from the line. That will give space to the ARs. I say that because my son was in one of these games with his 2 friends as AR. They're so shy. I mean, especially the AR2. He didn't say anything, and it was like that much the parent's foot from the line, and I had to go all the way around. Just silly with the game, saw the situation, and nicely I told him to be back up, at least 2 foot. Everybody was happy. Everybody did it right away. I mean, and I had my uniform, but I don't think if a young referee go there and say that, they will say no.
Yeah. And I think that's the important part is, setting that tone at the beginning of the game of, hey, before we get started here, we need you off the line. So that way your players can be safe and don't get hurt if they come off the line. So then it's really about the players as opposed to the referees. But we need to make sure we get our space set up correctly before we start the game, because as we all know, as the game gets going and the spectators get excited, they start creeping closer and closer to that touchline to be able to cheer louder. Okay, what else do we have? Any other comments, questions?
Meek raised his hand again.
Go ahead, Nick.
I guess I'm not very aware of how sort of U.S. soccer and all the governing bodies interact. Like, I have a vague idea, and I guess this feels like the time to ask it. Like, who's in charge of who, and how does that affect how they're making decisions?
I guess the way to answer that question would be to expand on what exactly you are looking for. What kind of communications or interactions are you looking from? If you're looking for like disciplinary stuff, that's a pretty simple answer to provide. If you're looking for like rules and who does the governing guidelines and stuff like that, that's going to be a lot trickier to answer.
I am curious, so I would take anything, but I know that everybody else doesn't want to hear about this for an hour long. So Can you give me 3 to 5 minutes about it?
Yeah. So I think you have US soccer, I guess, is that the highest point of the whole thing, Wayne? Everything falls under US soccer in some way?
Yeah, technically, the U.S. Olympic Committee, but U.S. Soccer as the governing body for soccer in the United States.
And then below that, you have probably several different leagues that run under US soccer. And then that's where it starts to get messy because each of those leagues then have the abilities to be able to make up their own rules, processes, etc. And I say that in the way that you will just stick with youth soccer. So youth soccer, you've got US youth soccer, which is what Washington Youth Soccer plays under. And then you have US club soccer, which is what Washington Premier League plays under. So two different governing bodies that dictate.
There's three.
What's the third one?
The United States Specialty Sports Association, USSSA. That's the governing body for the Elite Academy, the DPL, and the Girls Academy.
Right.
Additionally,
Nick,
US Club is the governing body for ECNL.
Okay. So Nick, as you can see right there, you've got three different governing bodies that are governing the youth games that we officiate. And as you move down that, we'll just stick the Washington Youth Soccer path because it's just where I seem to have more knowledge. You then have the RCL programs, you have the rec programs, and even each of the rec programs can create their own rules and govern themselves in a local area. So in, let's say, two areas in which Northwest soccer officials will come across that is that a lot of the rec games are governed by SSUL, which is a rec league. And then Pierce County also has their own rec league, which most of those games get played in the Pierce County area. So potentially referees who ref for Northwest soccer officials have two different leagues that govern the rec games that we cover on one website. So
Okay,
did I just...
You said RCL is a part of Washington Youth Soccer, which is a part of US Youth Soccer, and ECNL is part of US Club, and WPL is part of US Club. And then the third one was USSSA, which was EA, GA, and what was the third league in there?
DPL, Developmental Players League.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I wanted.
And then next year they'll change the acronyms for you because they'll have to have something better to attract more players.
Or someone got in an argument again and they gotta break off again.
Yeah. Okay,
Or
what other questions does anybody have?
Somebody can make some more money a different way.
You know,
Okay,
I'm glad you got the silver lining that I was going for there because I just didn't want to say it, but I think we were all thinking it.
So actually, it's not actually a question. It's something that I think we have to discuss. Whenever I have the chance, I always say that. And I would say again and again and again. The first thing for me, it's jewelries. Part of the uniform. Before jewelries, I wanted to mention that how nice would be a referee to have tucking his shirt while he's walking to the field and be presentable. I'm walking around, you know, whenever my son have a game and I see other referees, I saw that their shirt untucked and, you know, heavy movement or whatever. I mean, they can move as they wanted to move, but at least the shirt they have, it's gonna be nicer to be inside instead outside. One time I just approached the AR and I say, it would be nicer, it will look nicer if you have your shirt in. She looked at me like she was adult. she looked at me like weird. I didn't say anything else. I just stepped out. And then I went to the referee. I introduced myself and I said, yes, this is what I say. And I think this is more nicer and look nicer to everybody. I don't know if we have to do that or not. But, you know, this is something that we have to know for the newer referees. So I will stick with my thing like jewelries. I would say the referees that we run the games, let's be in the same level and say no jewelries, no jewelries, no tape on the earrings, not have them take everything off. It won't be, I mean, if they don't want to, they say, some of the kids, they say, oh, I can't. You can't, you're not playing. Easy. I had the situation this weekend. It was a player. I mentioned that 3 times, 2 times to the coaches, 1 time to the captains, 1 time to the coaches, 1 time to the captains. And before I flip the coin, I remind them again. I said, no tape. Take all the jewelries, all metal has to be out. And a kid show up with 2 black tapes on the earrings. And I just blow the whistle. I said, what is that? Did they say no jewelries? I said, I can't take it out. I can't take it out. I just sent him out to fix his uniform. Eventually he took it out and he asked for permission to walk in again. No subs. So I don't know. This is what I wanted to say.
Nope, I appreciate that, Facilius. If we all enforce the laws of the game in regards to the jewelry, then it makes it easier because players are getting a consistent message from all the referees. And I do agree with you. We all know that when we show up to the field with our uniforms looking professional, which means usually tucked in, we do get more respect from our spectators, players, and coaches. So I think it's important that we push our colleagues to be just as professional as we are.
Richard, I don't know if you can see the chat, but Cameron Pomeroy put a question in there. It's if you can't see it, I can paraphrase it for you.
Yeah, why don't you paraphrase it?
Basically, a player, I'm going to say, during the match received a mouth injury, and there was internal bleeding in the mouth. You know, maybe he cut his lip, maybe he cut his tongue, you know, whatever. Okay, and you know, he's basically asking at what point in time do you know, you tell the coach that it's okay to, you know, put him back in, or, you know, we're dealing with a blood situation.
So I think I kind of tried to read real quick. I think Connor, your part in regards to, I mean, what's the whole purpose of why we send a player off when there's blood? Bloods can be a hazardous material. It is how bloodborne pathogens can be transmitted. And so when you have blood, the laws of the game state that that the player needs to leave the field. Connor, this is a unique one. I don't think I've encountered this in all the games that I've officiated, but I can understand your concern in regards to if you have a player that's constantly spitting blood out of their mouth now because of whatever injury they have within their mouth. They are now spitting hazardous material all over your pitch for somebody to now slide through with an open wound on their knee or thigh, and now have a contamination. So I think your concern is completely reasonable, and I think an easy way to, you know, if you know, you hadn't noticed that the person was spitting and you say, oh, you know, hey, you got to go off. You can't be spitting all over the field, because they weren't spitting before they got injured. You know, I think it's pretty reasonable to say, yeah, coach, you know, hey, when the player stops spitting on the ground, you know, and can control that, then they'd be able to come back in again. Anybody else have thoughts on that one? Hopefully that helps, Connor. Okay, we got a couple minutes left for any last minute questions.
Richard, I want to get back to the jewelry thing because it's something that I've encountered several times since this past summer. And I've asked this before and you've given me guidance on it, but I don't think there's consistency across the referee community on it. And that's the religious exception. You know, I think this summer Cody, you know, was assigning one of the tournaments and she had an earring that could not physically be removed. It was, you know, you needed a wire cutter to remove it. And then I told the parents, go talk to the assigners. If I need one of them to come down and tell me that this is allowed. And I think Cody made her tape up her ears and then was allowed to play. I had one last week where it was a necklace. And you know, I'm not a religious expert, so I don't know, but they tend to be mostly from East Asian countries, Southeast Asian or Muslim dominant countries. But the necklace could not be removed. And I you know, I didn't know what to do. And then the coach said it's a religious thing, and you had told me if they say it's religious, then you take their word for it. And I asked him, do your best to tape it to his neck, but it's something that it made me think about it. I didn't want to do that level game anymore because if something happens, someone grabs his neck and I'm just going to be forever, you know, regretting that I allowed it. I just don't know. Like if some kid grabs that necklace and it causes serious harm, I feel like that's on me. I don't know what the guidance is there, but it makes me think like I don't want to do those young games.
Yeah, so you know, KD, I think you hit on it in your dialogue there about, you know, jewelry is not allowed on the pitch because it poses a danger. That's why we have to remove it. That's why the FIFA even put into writing that you can't use tape to cover it up, because they felt, you know, that was just people circumventing the rules or the laws. I think with the religious exemption, if that is used, then again, our job is to make it as safe as possible for the participants and for that individual. And you asking the player to tape a necklace so that it's not bouncing around outside of their jersey in 5 minutes is completely acceptable, and I think is reasonable for that player to do in order for them to play, to be able to provide a safe playing environment for the player themselves and their opponents. You know, beyond that, you've done what what FIFA has asked us to do in regards to providing a safe environment. And since they've allowed that, at that point, you don't have any liability from them stating that that they're wearing something that jewelry for religious purposes. I don't know if that helps or not.
Yeah, it does. It does. I just feel like I don't know. It puts you in an uncomfortable position because you want kids to play, right? But then there's also that safety issue, and I know there's just not consistency across the ref community with it. I know some refs allow that tape, others adamant no way, no how. I'm on the latter group. I don't want jewelry on. IFAB specifically states you can't even tape it down. But that religious exception is the one that puts a kink in all of this. Yeah.
Yep, I hear you.
Yeah.
Vasilius?
One more for Vasilius.
Yeah, I would like to stick with this religion's jewelries, and I appreciate from KD that he mentioned that because I had the same incident in one of my game, and it was like a U13 game, and it was one kid from India or somewhere there, and he had a whole bunch of wristbands rings. So it was like 3 or 4 big rings on his arm, and then a necklace. And the coach said, the kid said that it's religious. Some other kids, they jump on and they say, oh, it's religious. And I said, I'm sorry, it's religious. I know jewelry is not, they can't have jewelries like this on the field. They have to be removed. I'm sorry for that. I apologize for this, that they have to remove, and it's religious. If it doesn't feel comfortable, I can't do anything. They can't put tape around it because it was like huge. And I say either he will remove it or he have to stay out of the field. And this is raised something, a different question now. With this situation, anybody can come to the field and say, oh, okay, so this is a religious, why should I take it off? And then I feel like we're being trapped in something that we say, the law says no jewelries, but if it's religious, yes, jewelries. And then everybody will mention that and say, oh, this is religious. And we don't have any proof of that. This is actually what happened. The incident happens to me with the KD mentioned about the religious jewelries.
So I think what I encourage us as referees, I don't know, Larry Metz put a nice chat in the chat if people want to read it, because we even a lot of the leagues don't want to even issue, like a waiver to be able to say, okay, this player can wear a necklace in their games because of a religious purpose. I think your example, Vasilius, I think you're absolutely right. We cannot be the ones trying to determine whether or not their statement of it being religious is accurate or inaccurate. I think we can ensure that we're providing a safe playing environment. And somebody who's got huge loop bracelets on needs to find a way to make sure that they aren't going to be a danger to their opponents. And so I would be insisting that they get wrapped in pre-wrap, or they get taped, even though we're not supposed to tape jewelry. But at that point, we're not taping jewelry. We're now taping a religious jewelry, which the laws of the game allows them to wear. So you guys are all absolutely right. Player safety is important. We also have to be respectful for the provisions in the laws that allows them to wear jewelry for religious purposes. Let's just make sure it's not gonna, make sure we've done what we can to make sure it's not gonna hurt someone else. And with that, we've hit 8 o'clock. So I appreciate all the great conversations tonight. Hopefully you all were able to get something out of it. And always, I want to thank everybody out there covering games. Like I said, we're about halfway through, a little bit more than halfway through. We're on the downhill side of it all. And before we know it, the games will be dried up again. So please do what you can to help us get the games covered over these next couple weeks. Rec League ends the weekend before Thanksgiving. And then, like I said, things will slow down and be on a better pace for all of us in covering games. So thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. And hopefully we'll see you out on the pitch soon.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you so much.
Have a good night.